fully digital TCG that's very similar to Magic, but it uses a digital design space in a couple of interesting ways to kind of reduce some of the variance that Magic has. One of the first things you'll notice here is that on either side of the table, my opponent and I have different portraits, and the portraits are more than just cosmetic. They affect your starting health totals. You guys start with 23 health, and my opponent starts with 24. And they also give you they give you an ability that allows you to do different things when you play so many resources. So for instance, on my opponent's side of the table, for 5 charges, they get to draw a card off the top of my deck, and it turns that card into a blood threshold, so it turns it into a color or a shard that my opponent can play. And on my side of the table, my champion gives me a threshold of my choice, and thresholds are kind of your colors in Hex. This grab from the bash or something you're throwing around. This is a deck list that I am working on to try and combat some of the Kaigalichu decks that were good in the bash. It's basically Dreaming Fox, right? It looks like my opponent disconnected as soon as we joined, though. That's annoying. Message says my opponent's disconnected from the game. So one of the really interesting ways Hex reduces variance that Magic has is the opening hands in Hex aren't purely random. Hex uses a modified hypergeometric distribution to remove some of the non-games that you get in games like Magic where you have resources in your deck. So Hex automatically removes the 10% most resource light hands and 5% most resource dense hands from the possible hands that could be generated when you're playing. So basically everyone in Hex mulligans 15% less than you would in Magic because the game's just like not generating those hands to start with you. The rest of the cards in your deck are still distributed completely randomly, but the rest of the cards are still distributed completely randomly, but your opening hands are higher quality on average. One of the other things that really sells Hex for me is that they have a full buy-sell trade secondary market. So unlike a lot of the CCGs where you just vomit money in and you don't get anything back out ever, Hex, you can sell your decks for other decks or kind of play the stock market type thing like we do in Magic if you're into that sort of thing. Looks like we're playing a Blood Mirror here. I'm going to attack with my Vampire Prince. My Vampire Prince is a 2-1 with Flight and Life Drain. Combat in Hex works just like in Magic. You declare attackers, your opponent declares blockers. This Vampire Prince, if it were to hit my opponent, it would flip over the top card of their deck into their discard pile for us, but looks like they're just going to go ahead and trade here. This resource is a slow resource, so it kind of comes into play tapped, you can think of it as. And this card is a really interesting use of the digital design space. It has a mechanic called Fate Weave on it. So when I play this resource out here, dang it, child. Sure, we can put the clip in here. So when I play this resource out here, I basically get to stack the top card of my deck. I choose resource or non-resource, and I already have my 4th resource in hand, so I'm going to stack a non-resource on top, and I'm guaranteed to draw a non-resource next turn. So it kind of lets you smooth out your draws a lot. A lot of randomness in the past set. I don't have... So Transmogrifade's the only card in my deck that uses the word random. A lot of the random effects in this game, they're not like Hearthstone where it like deals damage to random troops or anything like that. Fate Weave is probably the best. It's super smooth in terms of the variance that it mitigates. Speaking of Transmogrifade, this is a card that uses kind of variance in the design space. It transforms the target troop that you target with it into a different artifact, constant, or troop with cost 1 less. So it's kind of a downgrade. And the important thing to remember is like there's a lot of draft chafe in TCGs, right? Cards that are limited playable but not constructed playable. So on average, you're taking your opponent's constructed playable and turning it into a limited card that's much worse. Yeah, I really don't need a 4th resource yet. So I'm just going to go ahead and, or 5th resource. I'm just going to grab this Transmogrifade. Play another Arcane Focus, see what we can find here. Blood's Favor is pretty good. This is a modal card, and one of the modes is it lets us draw 2 cards and lose 2 life, so grind a little bit in what's looking to be like a control mirror. I'm talking mostly about the blue Herofall thing. Well, you don't have to play that card, right? Like, that card's like pseudo-playable, and again, like that card also has play to it too because you have control over the cards you're targeting. So like Into the Unknown is worse against prismatic cards because prismatic cards have a higher card quality on average, and it's better against cards that are shardless like Darkheart. I mean, like, if you look at the quality of the cantrips, like Sleight of Hand is probably arguably similar in power level to Opt. So my hand here, not fantastic in a controlling mirror match. I've got 2 sweeper type effects. This gives all troops -3/-3. And one of the things that's important in Hex, because it's a digital TCG, it can track things permanently like this nicely. So when something gets -3/-3 from this Massacre, it's going to be -3/-3 permanently. So that means if it gets discarded or goes back to my opponent's hand, it's still going to have that -3/-3 on it. This card's really terrifying. So it's a 1/4 that when it deals damage to me, they get to look at the top 4 cards of my deck, and they draw one of them, and then the other 3 get discarded. So we're 10 out of 10. This card has cards like the Scarab God, like a 1-card win condition. Yeah, so the 1-card win condition that this deck plays is the card called Psychic Ascension. And what Psychic Ascension allows us to do is change into a different champion. Huh. So I'm going to play Bride of the Damned here. This card's super powerful. So it's a 3/3 lethal for 3. Lethal's like Death Touch for the Magic players. When you gain a blood threshold, so when you play a blood resource or activate my champion power, we get to give an opposing troop -1/-1 permanently. And then as long as we have 5 blood thresholds, when an opposing troop dies, it comes back into play under our control. So I'm going to use my champion power to gain a blood threshold here, and then I'm going to kill this library curator. And then the library curator is going to come back into play under my control because that champion activation was my 5th blood threshold. This Bride's probably going to die, but hopefully this library curator can hang around and deal some damage to my opponent. One of the things Hex does is great. You'll notice here, this action says quick action, and this action says basic action. So quick cards you can play on your opponent's turn. You'll notice whenever I play a card or activate an ability, it goes into the center of the screen here. Gives both players a chance to respond. So Hex uses a priority-based system to allow games to be extra interactive. Transmogrifading my Bride. Yep. And again, they turned it into a worse 2-drop here. This is a 0/3 that when it attacks, it gets +1 for each attacking troop. Locket of Reflection. Well, this card is terrifying. This card says, this is a 4-cost card that says whenever you play a card, if there is exactly 1 copy of that card with that same name in your deck, you get to play that card for free. So basically, my opponent's deck likely has a lot of 2-ofs in it. And this lets them play multiple copies of every card whenever they play it. Going to attack with these 2 for 3 points of damage. We're in a little bit of trouble here. This Locket of Reflection is probably going to bury us. We don't really have a lot of good answers to this. Very powerful card. So Vampire Queen is a 3/3 with Flight and Life Drain that summons 2 1/1s when it comes into play. And they got 2 Vampire Queens here. Thankfully, we've got this Massacre to give all the troops in play -3/-3, so we're going to get to clean this Vampire Queen up nicely. Yeah, if my opponent rendered my PA, we probably can't win the game. Clean up all the vampires. And you can see here, these vampires in my opponent's bin, if they had some way to return troops from their discard pile to their hand, they keep that minus from the Massacre when they head in there. Opponent's got 2 life. Is this unique? This is unique. So this is not a combo for my opponent. Second Librarian comes into play. Probably going to just Dread End here. This is another sweeper effect of sorts. It transforms every troop into play into this 1/1 that dies at the end of turn. So it's going to clean my opponent's board up pretty nicely here. Go ahead and Dread End. Turn all my opponent's things into Dreadlings that are going to go away. So we're going to take a little nug for 3 here, but I think that's fine. Again, we're a control deck, so like using our Health Turtle as a resource is fine here. That card's going to bury us. So this card prophesizes, so it modifies the next 3 cards in my opponent's deck to draw extra cards. The next action, resource, and troop in their deck get when you play this draw card. Why should I Transmogrifade first? That doesn't make any sense, right? Like, just in case they had some kind of interaction? That's not quite ancestral. It costs them 3 resources. I'm just gonna pass here. Kinda like, we don't have good single cleanup type cards. They likely don't have another really go wide troop like Vampire Queen, and we'd just die to those 2/1/1 sitting there beating us down. So they played a resource there, and you saw it had draw 2 cards on it, so they picked up a couple extra cards there. Play a second Exarch of the Egg, yep. Looking to draw like another Bride of the Damned here, so we can like play Bride plus kill their things and take them over. Mad Robomancer, that's pretty good. So what does this do? They've got, this is a 3/3 that creates a random action when they play it, and when you play an action, it gets +1/+1. I'm gonna go ahead and Strangle this Mad Robomancer, and then whenever they play an action, they get copies of this card, and then I'm gonna Herofall this one. Maybe I'm supposed to wait a turn to see if I draw Bride of the Damned, but just answering the Mad Robomancer's ASAP seems appealing. So my opponent has Locket of Reflection, and their deck is likely all 2-ofs. So whenever they play a card, if there's exactly one more copy of that card in their deck, they get to play it for free directly from their deck. And this is another card, like, it's not super powerful or complex, but this is kind of something you could really only do logistically in a digital card game, because, like, to do this in a paper card game, you'd have to, like, play the card and then, like, reveal your entire deck to your opponent to verify that, like, there's not a third copy of this card that you're casting. Opponent's got a bunch of cards in hand. The question is really how many of their cards are interrupts. So if I draw my, basically if I draw my, what's it called? My, oh, I'm blanking on it. If I draw my Psychic Ascension, will they be able to interrupt it? Maybe. I don't think that's strictly true, Ace. Like, if I draw my Psychic Ascension, they don't have an interrupt, they're not going to be in a good spot. Oh, I wasn't paying attention. I just Fate Weaved there, and I could have Fate Weaved a resource to the top of my deck because they're going to Renner this turn. Oh, look. They drew my Psychic Ascension. Now the game is over. Good. Good, 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 good. We're done now. All right, so we have a bunch of cards that are good in the control mirror. Massacre, Dread End, Transmogrifade are not particularly good. Vampire Princess is good. Verdict is good. Demented Ascension is good. Primordial Cockatwice is good. Maybe I want the Massacre to clean up Vampire Queen. Yeah, I probably want the Massacre to clean up Vampire Queen. I think I want Strangles to deal with their Librarians. Maybe I don't want all of them. Dingle is a kind of a clean answer to the Vampire Queen as well. So Dingle takes the card off their chain and turns it into a 0/1. So it, like, super downgrades the troop, which is convenient with Bride of the Damned because you can then Bride and give the Dingle -1/-1 and then take it into play under our control. Oh, they do have a lot of blood cards, don't they? Ire might be okay. So what does Paragon of Thought do? Paragon of Thought changes our champion. So instead of making a threshold, we become this other champion, which for 1 charge creates a random action for us. And then whenever we play an action, it generates a random troop with the same cost and thresholds of that action. So very, very powerful. Kind of like, it kind of gives us like this crushing inevitability. The average quality of the cards we're generating randomly isn't very high because, again, there's a lot of draft chafe that you can generate. But because we're generating such a high quantity of cards, we're going to be able to overpower our opponent a lot of the time. I've got a couple copies of Demented Ascension here in the board that I really kind of want to try. That might be bad. Yeah, you win by pure value even if the cards are average or mediocre. That's exactly correct. So this is another card that transforms our champion. Demented Ascension triggers if our opponent's discard pile has more cards in it than their deck. And then the Demented Paragon lets us play cards out of our opponent's discard pile. TCG browser, I think the API sync wasn't working last night when I put this together. Let me check if it uploaded this morning when I saved it. Yep, alright, it is now on TCG browser. One of the great things about Hex is they have a full API. I'm just going to guarantee a 4th resource here. Hitting all of our resource drops early in the control mirror is generally good. Oh, dude. Alright, I need to take 5 here for a second, or 2. My child has Fat Boy is covered in chocolate. Make him run, he's full of chocolate. Take another Blood's Favor here. I think, again, just like grinding is what we want to be doing here. Try to generate as much card advantage as possible. Next turn, we want to start holding up Verdict of the Ancient Kings to interrupt Locket of Reflection, so I'm actually going to wait on these Blood's Favors for a turn here. Probably wait till we have potentially 5 resources to play. You're an obnoxious little boy. Yeah, basically, Leof, the plan is, I put them in the board for Kaigalichu, actually, because Kaigalichu fills its discard pile up very quickly and consistently. Is basically the goal with that card. It's just another threat that I want to try. I'll play this out. I could be a little annoyed if they Herofall this, but I could Verdict to Herofall. You want cereal, Declan? Confounding Ire, sure. If they are using that to interrupt that card, that is fine with me. So I don't actually know if it's good, but it's something I want to try. I think it could be good against Kaigalichu. So that's pretty bad for us. I think I'm just obligated to Massacre here, because this only triggers when it deals damage to us, so like if I even though it's still in play, it doesn't actually matter. Maybe I boarded out too much removal. So this is a 2/3 that whenever it hits us, they reveal a card at random from our hand, and if it's an action, they get to take it away from us. Let's draw 2 cards, hopefully find one of our Strangles. Or I guess I have all my Herofalls in my deck, right? That's a tilt. Yeah, I'm just going to Blood's Favor again here. Hopefully we dodge whatever this is going to do to us. We have 2 actions in our hand here, so I have a 1 in 3 chance of taking a card away from us here when this Vampire Princess hits. No whammy, no whammy, no whammy, no whammy, no whammy, no whammy, pow! Sweet. Dodged it the first time. So you have to activate their champion power to grab the top card of our deck there. Looking for removal. Fusion of choice. Maybe I'm just supposed to have played Ryaalinth there. Huh. Yeah, I'm actually going to Tomb Swap this Vampire Prince. This is in our deck to get Brides back to our hand in the Herofall matchup, but I just want one more, or one less action in my deck. I put it in the reserves for the Kaigalichu matchup, Ace. I want to try it out there. It seems like it could be reasonable. And I figure if I have it, I might as well bring it into the control batch. No, chumping with Vampire Prince seems terrible. I'd rather just play the Ryaalinth out. Of course, they hit the 1 in 5. Looking for Bride of the Damned. Looking for Bride of the Damned. Sure, but I don't want to using my Vampire Prince to chump block to dodge a 1 in 5 chance is a bad use of my resources. So it's actually a really good example of playing to win versus playing to not lose. And like chumping with a Vampire Prince there is definitely playing to not lose as opposed to playing to win the game. Oh, I guess I shouldn't have played this, because if they go kill, they take my Psychic Ascension. And they have Lock It Out, so they're pretty likely to go kill. Alright, now let's double block. So we're obligated to. Yes, but chump blocking isn't a 1-for-1. Chump blocking is a 0-for-1. Oh, Lord. Oh, I don't have double Sapphire, but this makes Sapphire. It's like, oh god, why can't I play this Ascension? Correct. I don't understand what you're trying to say, Kinetic. Can you elaborate what you're trying to say? Because I don't understand at all what you're trying to say. It was incorrect to play a Vampire Prince and chump block because that's not how you win a game. That's how you tread water. This reduces their Renner power is basically free, is what it comes down to. Herofall's a great draw. Let's generate one here. Yes! What are you trying to say? Use your words. Losing the Ryaalinth is fine. Getting 1-for-1 is fine. Use your words, be an adult. What is the problem? I don't understand the point you're trying to get across. Alright, just go away. Makes us a bunch of chump blockers, which is nice. If you don't want to be asked for clarification when you say a thing that doesn't make sense in my chat, don't talk. Yeah, don't say 1 and 2 words at a time. It's frustrating and annoying and it's clutter. Yeah, correct, right? It seemed like they were just giving us play-by-play. Yeah, the door's locked on purpose, so you can't go in there. Yeah, whoa. We're pretty dead here. We're pretty dead here. They certainly have a bunch of removal in their hand. Yeah, let's move on to the next one here. So matches like that kind of make me want to just run back the Ardent deck this weekend. Because, like, there's going to be enough people in this game that, like, want to metagame the Kaigalichu deck that I really don't want to run into a bunch of Kaigalichu metagaming beer matches. I'd much rather just, like, play the Ardent deck and, like, run these clunky blood decks out of the game. The Ardent deck is very reasonable against these blood decks. Has good quality pressure, good rate troops. I guess to play good tempo cards like Runebind. I think it needs a second blood. But most of the resources in our deck are blood, so hopefully we put a blood shard or a wall on top here and just play vampire on two. The Tri-Shard Ardent deck that I top 8'd the bash with last weekend. The stream title is changed. Yep, stream title is changed. For those of you, for your information, Gorg, if you don't refresh your stream, the stream title won't change even though I've updated it for you. Yeah, I think Constance decks and just like other clunky blood decks like what I'm playing, I basically expect a lot of people to be playing things similar to what I'm trying here. And like, I really don't want to like get caught in the middle of like this awkward greed fest. So I'm going to put a non-resource on top of my deck here, and I'm actually not going to play this Arcane Focus out here because I don't want to focus when I know I'm drawing a card I want to draw next turn anyways. So the problem with the Ardent deck against Kaigalich, and actually this is just why the Declan Scott, you are not going upstairs. No. No. One of the problems is that, actually, the biggest problem with the Gravebane Vial in general is that the Kaigalichu deck can just cast its cards. You just get to cast your cards. So, like, if you Gravebane Vial them, they just get to 7 resources and play an Eternal Seeker and kill you. Awesome, Army of Thalia. Congrats. That's sweet. I always love to hear messages like that. So my opponent's champion here for 7 charges creates a burning banner that'll give all their troops speed. I'm okay just taking out Vampire Princes here. Get rid of all their possible card advantage. I don't really care about getting hit by this Blabsmith. Focus here. Ryaalinth seems fine. I'll put a non-resource on top of my deck. Hey, Nazar, it is in fact Hexy time. We 5-0'd, right? Play Ryaalinth out here. So Ryaalinth is a 5/5 flyer. When it comes into play, it soul curses all of my opponent's troops. And what soul curse does is, if one of the soul curse troops die, they all die. Yeah, Hex is sweet. It has a lot of... One of the things I really like about Hex is that the designers really push the games towards being kind of a little bit more mid-rangey and interactive a lot of the time. It's like a pseudo-sweeper dragon, right? And I like... Hi. You want to... I'm sorry you're upset, but we're not going upstairs. You want a different show? I don't know what that means. Yeah, it's like a super scribe, basically, is what it comes down to. You want a different show? Alright, let's put a different show on. You want this one? Stack them for 5 here. I can't wait till you have actual words, kid, and you can just tell me what you want the first time. You want this? You want this? It's like... Ugh. Well, that was a reason to not attack with this. Man, I'm pretty off this control deck. So, Transmogrifade in general, you want to use on lower cost troops. I am so... I'm so off it. I'm so off it.